But when you push that cookie cutter into the dough, you leave a lot of really great goodness on the outside. You are forcing yourself into a space, and there isn't room for all of you if you're trying to push yourself into someone else's mold.
Introducing The Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of The Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Vixen Voice. Today, my guest is Rachel Burr, and she is the founder of, listen to this, Catamentum, and she will explain to us the meaning behind the name of her company. She's an executive coach, leadership consultant, and I love this, people expert. I think we're going to have fun conversations today. And Rachel is also an author. Her book came out this month, so we'll be chatting about that. It's called Butterfly Goo, The Down and Dirty Truth of Transformation. And boy, if you've been through any kind of transformation in your life, you totally get that title, right? So I can't wait to dig in today. We're going to be talking about all things authentic leadership, navigating ambiguity, a lot of things I often see my clients struggle with and friends and other entrepreneurs. So I know Rachel's an executive coach, but if you're listening and you're an executive, you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you're just the leader of your household. I mean, there's so many ways we show up and lead, and the better we do it in a way that feels good and aligned to us, the better our life is. So I'm excited to dig in. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you so much, April. Thank you for having me here.
Yay, I'm so excited to have our chat this morning. So I want to start, I always like to dig into your story, but people expert, tell us a little bit about that. I love that.
You know, I think a lot of us come to coaching from different backgrounds, different reasons, all of that. I started out as someone who wanted to be a clinical psychologist, and all that training, the depth of understanding, I think that's been a fabulous foundation for me. I still very much respect my colleagues and my friends who still do that kind of work. I found that I was working with folks who were pretty severely mentally ill at the time. And most of the time we were working to get them back to functioning as opposed to helping them step in, to their best self beyond that. I have the most respect for my colleagues, the most respect for the folks who are going through that kind of struggle. But I found that I really wanted to take my skills, my passion to helping people step into the best version of themselves, to your point, their authentic selves. And I know that word gets tossed around, so we'll talk about it. So that's really how I came to coaching, having that people expertise, I think, behind the psychology. That has really informed how I understand people. I also have a master's degree in organization development. So it's people individually, how we work, and people in groups and how we work together.
Yeah. I mean, people alone are fascinating, but people in groups, that's a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I was having lunch yesterday. A client of mine wanted me to meet like her new director of ops, and we were having lunch and we're talking about that and just human behavior in the workplace and creating culture and everything. And I mean, it's really fascinating how people show up in different ways, especially, you know, she brought this woman in to kind of alter their culture or get them back on track. And so interesting things is when you're trying to bring accountability back into a group and they're used to operating a different way. So I can't wait to dig into these things with you because I know, and I share these stories because if you're listening and you're going through something similar, it's normal. Like, especially new people, a lot of the women I coach that are new to entrepreneurship, they're shocked by the personal level of growth that it takes
Yes.
to lead a team, lead a business, etc. And that's why I'm so excited we're talking about leadership, because my strong belief, Rachel, is that women are often the foundations of their home, their business if they're running one, their community, etc. And it's a different form of leadership, but it's absolutely leadership. And I always advocate putting your oxygen mask on first. I come from that area of like, hey, it's not selfish to take care of yourself, because if the foundation crumbles, so do all of these other institutes that you like uphold: your family, your children, your significant other. And so, I can't wait to dig into that. But before we get going, I would love to hear from you, Rachel. It's your first time on the Vixen Voice. And as I mentioned, I mainly work with women. Most of our listeners are women. And I find that we women are amazing, multi-dimensional creatures. And we're multi-dimensional in many different ways, right? That's the beauty. So I get the honor of talking to all women from all over and all walks of life and all different experiences. So what I'd love to hear from you to start, Rachel, is what is maybe a pivotal story in your life that brought you to where you are or carved out like this amazing woman we're chatting with today?
Oh, thank you. Yes. The first one that comes to mind actually is the foundation for the book. And it was my first big quit, as I like to say. Up until that point, the only thing I had thought about was being a psychologist. Throughout my entire career, I was about halfway through a PhD, probably a little bit more than halfway, and I realized I was miserable. This is the only thing I'd ever wanted to do, and I realized that I love learning, I love the academic setting. I didn't want to do what this career was preparing me to do. But quitting this wasn't quitting a job, quitting, school. It felt like cutting off my right arm. Yeah. This was so much an integral part of my identity. And in the book, you can read about what went into that. But when I finally had that moment, that breaking open and realizing there was something out there, I could believe that I could do something. I could be happy. I could be someone who could contribute and have a passion in a very different way. And quitting that, hardest thing I've probably ever done and best decision of my life. I cannot imagine, had I not taken that leap, where I would be.
Congratulations on that leap, and thank you for sharing that, because in my conversations with women, either through coaching or just life, a lot of us are stuck in the good girl syndrome, I call it. I should do this. Like, I'm halfway through my PhD. I should continue. I should become a psychologist, right? I mean, I know I went to law school not knowing what I wanted to do. And after 1 year, I'm like, after cramming all this crap in my head, I'm going to go practice law, right? Like, sometimes we just end up there. And congratulations on that leap of faith and following your heart and your purpose, because I do feel it's so hard. I sold my financial practice to do what I'm doing today. And I love my clients there. I loved what I did there, but it just came a time that, like you, I had a vision that God was calling me to do something different. But like in that process of selling the business and leaving, it's a very lonely experience. Did you have that same experience when you were going through your big quit, or how was that for you?
Absolutely. One of the things that I find, and this whole thing is about feeling stuck, and that we're comfortable in the discomfort a lot of times. And I was trying so many things to make it work and really try to find happiness without change. So just adding things on. And one of the challenges was I felt like I was on this train, kind of idea of a circus train, right? Fun, enjoyable, and not realizing it's heading for a destination that I don't want to go. There were two types of people on that train with me. There were people that were so excited about the destination, wanted to be academics, wanted to be psychologists. And there were people like me who didn't want to be on that train, but also who did not know how to get off. And so there was nobody around me to help. There was nobody around me to tell me how I might figure this out differently. And so I think it's a very lonely experience. And especially we talk about the imposter syndrome, and that, that is a very lonely experience because we're afraid people will figure out our secret. And so we hold back maybe the fact that we're unhappy, the fact that we doubt ourselves, and we are just isolating ourselves in the process and not reaching out for the help that might be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a time in all of our lives where we learn to ask for help. For me, it was when I was married to an addict and trying to figure my way out of that. And here's what's surprising. Some people that you think really care about you disappear in those times, right? And sometimes it's because they can't handle it. It's not even about you. But,
Yeah.
that's a really interesting experience to be in too. And just realize, okay, keep asking because, on the flip side, I had people that were fairly new to my lives that showed up like angels during that period. And so, that's one thing I've been grateful for my whole life is always being surrounded by amazing people. And maybe it's just that I always see the brighter side of things and I ignore the not so amazing people and focus on the amazing ones. But, I share that because I think a lot of women who listen are going through some type of transformation in their life. A lot of women who tune in with us are 35, above, 40s, 50s, 60s. It's a very transformational time of life. And that's why I love working with women at that time because they want something more. It's like I checked all the boxes, but like, why am I still not happy, right? Like I'm being called to do more. So I love that sounds exactly like what happened with you. And, you were brave enough to step up to the call. So share with us about your book a little bit more. I love the name. As I shared with you, it's so funny. I just went last weekend with my nephew to the Butterfly Arboretum here in Houston. And I mean, he was mesmerized, but the butterflies are so beautiful, like all the different types when you see them. And before going in, there was like a glass enclosed cocoons. I had never looked at cocoons that closely. They're really beautiful, many of them. I know there's a struggle for the butterfly to get out and it has to come, but like the beginning and the end are beautiful processes, right? So how'd you come up with that title? And tell us just a little bit more about your impetus for the book.
Well, and I think like you, I've always resonated with the idea of the butterfly. In fact, when I was a little girl, the way the migration pattern used to happen is there was a huge tree near my school. And at certain times of the year, you'd walk by and it would be covered in monarchs.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful. And it's such an image that resonates with us in terms of transformation. That's also the catch or the piece that's the problem, is that we get so focused on the beauty of it. We don't appreciate that the goo that it has to go through, the arduous nature of transformation. And I think if we don't dispel that myth, we don't make transformation accessible, understandable to people, and therefore achievable. And what I love about the analogy is that that caterpillar goes into the cocoon. And it's funny, I'm still using cocoon. My brother's an entomologist. He assures me caterpillars go into a chrysalis, moths go into a cocoon. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to stick with my analogy because everybody knows that.
Right. Let's not confuse people.
Yeah,
Don't let
exactly.
facts get in the way of a
No,
good
don't
story.
get facts. Yeah, a good story. And what I love about it is the caterpillar goes into that cocoon with everything it needs to transform.
Yeah.
So it basically dissolves, itself in this green goo, and yet it rebuilds itself with the building blocks that it already has, that were already in it. It's not about turning itself into something it's not. It's about bringing out the best of itself. What's important to know too is we get so fixated on the emergence, the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. But that's not the transformation. That's the result of the transformation. It's the result of all the arduous work that the caterpillar goes through to become the butterfly. And I like to say, I think if we appreciated that arduous struggle and the nature of transformation, we wouldn't expect to be born butterflies.
Yeah, I love everything about this because I have this deep belief, and this is how I coach the women I work with. They already have everything they need inside of them. They just need a safe space for it to come out and for them to vocalize what they want and figure out how to get it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I love working with women who've had a little bit of life experience, because I don't know about you, Rachel, but when I look back at my 18-year-old self, I'm like, she was amazing. She was courageous. She was intuitive. And then, like, responsibility comes. I became a lawyer. I worked at a huge law firm. I worked 80 hours a week. And then you fall in love. And then this happens. And, I don't have kids, but many people have kids. And I have nieces and nephews, and I have aging parents. Like, we have all these things that we're dealing with. And as the responsibility piles on, it's almost like the cocoon being built around us, right? And then one day we wake up and go, wait, where'd I go? Like, I want myself again. And that is my favorite work to do with women. Because the funny thing is, I call myself a business coach, but it's really pulling them out of this. And then they have a better life, they have better relationships, they make more money, like all the things, right? So I think we do similar work. So I love this idea of, yes, the struggle and the transformation. And so in the book, are you walking through with tips for this, sharing your story? How does it play out?
It started out originally in my mind as being more of a self-help book with some, memoirish work going through it so that it would be an example for people. But as I was writing it, and I always say, people are like, well, what had you write this book? And I said, I feel like this book has been wanting to write itself through me for a very long time. And I finally gave up fighting it. So how it transformed, going through my own transformation, because caterpillars get one butterfly, but we get many butterflies when we allow it to happen. It turned into more of a memoir. And then at the end, I give tips, and there's a playground area at the back with exercises and questions if people want to play with their own transformation. And that's why I say I am not forcing it. I'm not even recommending it. I'm giving you the option to play. If all you want to do is read a humorous memoir and, laugh at my mistakes, then great, do that. But it's really important for me, I think, to have that vulnerability to show the mess and being very clear that this was not a straight, kind of line. I didn't even know where I was going when I started. But one of the things I like to say is you have to begin where you are or you'll never start. And my humor is integral to who I am, my voice, all of it. And I think helping people laugh also takes down barriers. It makes us more accessible. And my own vulnerability, hopefully, will help people open up themselves and embrace the possibility of what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I want to pause on one thing you said, like you didn't know where you were going. I mean, same thing happened with me when I was forming the Vixen Gathering. My vision was of speaking on the stage at Madison Square Garden. Well, it was April 2020. There were no stages, but it wasn't me speaking. It was the view of the audience, like loving themselves, impacted, joyful, etc., bringing together this group of women. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like upheavaling my whole life, selling a successful business, like transforming all these things for this vision. And so a lot of times you do have to take the first steps in the dark and faith. And, a lot of times working with women, I see they want to get everything right. They want to have a perfect business plan before they go. And, I had an episode about this, and your first year of business, you don't know what the heck you're doing. Just go with it, right? So when you're working with your clients, like in coaching and leadership, like how do you help them through those first steps of unknown?
For me, and we had talked a little bit in advance about authenticity and what that looks like. And we bring that to our lives. We bring that to our leadership. And obviously, leaders are people first. So we don't get to say, okay, we're leaders. We can put that whole people thing behind us. I think people sometimes try to do that, much to their kind of downfall, probably. But for me, it is about starting with the core. Sometimes we don't know even who we are. We've been spending so much time reacting to other people, listening to what we're supposed to be. I like to talk about cookie cutters a lot of times with my clients, that we see sometimes leadership as a cookie cutter that we have to force ourselves into. We do that in a lot of life, to be honest. And from what I remember, because I'm not a cook myself, but making cookies with my mom, you take that cookie cutter and you push it into the dough, and you get a perfect little image. Like, let's say it's a little star, and you get a perfect little star, and you get a lot of perfect little stars that are exactly the same over and over. But when you push that cookie cutter into the dough, you leave a lot of really great goodness on the outside. So you are forcing yourself into a space, and there isn't room for all of you if you're trying to push yourself into someone else's mold. The first step is to understand, who are we? Who am I? Who are you? What are the values that you hold? What are your talents? What are your interests? What are your skills? How do you get in touch with that first? Because those are your building blocks. Going back to your caterpillar, right? You have all that already inside you. Now, how do we help you bring that out based on the leadership position you're in, the entrepreneurial position you're in, the home life that you're in, all of it, because different situations will require something different of you, but you are still bringing that to those situations. So how do you do the best to bring who you are to those situations in order to be successful?
Yeah, I love that. And I can share that when I started taking, I joined Strategic Coach, and then I took the Colby assessment and the Print assessment. And then I did a day and a half where we dissected me as a person one-on-one, which was the most impactful event. I'm like, holy crap. Like, you have to understand who you are, also that you can't expect other people to show up as you as the leader, right? Like, you're probably going to be the oddball. And like, then you surround yourself with people that fill in the gaps, right? And that have their beautiful, unique abilities and how to bring that out. But it's interesting you talk about vulnerability. And I feel leadership is really a balance or a dance of vulnerability and providing stability, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the fine line, because you want to be vulnerable and share things, but like, if you share certain things, your team doesn't feel safe, right?
Yes.
So I think this is a huge responsibility and weight on the shoulders of leaders. So let's talk about that. Like, how would you describe that dance or that balance?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think, first of all, words mean different things to different people. And it's really important, right, to understand the idea of vulnerability. And some people get the idea that vulnerability means that they just share everything and it all just comes flowing out, no matter what's happening at home or work or whatever. And in my perspective, and other people out there may feel differently, vulnerability we're talking about with the leader is, let's say you're in a situation and you have people that have ideas, and maybe you can say, okay, we're in this together. I may not know exactly what this is, but I have faith that we can find this. Or somebody will challenge you and you'll say, you know what? I'm not sure. Let's figure that out together. That is vulnerable. Saying I don't know and opening yourself up to other ideas, huge vulnerability. And it's still done with a confidence and a surety as a leader that you will help hold the container for all of this. And as a leader as well, your job is to buffer what's happening, coming down around all of it, so your team can focus. It doesn't mean isolating them or protecting them completely. You're still going to communicate the message, but it's one of those where people talk about cascading the message. It's not. It's a step down approach. If you stand at the bottom of a waterfall that's like, hundreds of feet high, it's going to crush you. So you do not want that for your team. As a leader, you have to act as a buffer, as a filter. You have to allow them to understand context and understand some of what's happening, but it's not like walking into the meeting and saying, oh my gosh, the CEO just decimated me. I was just feeling like so small and I couldn't defend us. That is, to your point, not giving your team confidence, not helping them feel safe in terms of giving them that space to be able to do their work. They need to focus on the work, on the execution, and you need to manage that space, and you need to handle the ambiguity, the gray that is outside that space in order to help them succeed, help all of you to succeed, help the business to succeed.
No, I love that. I always say, let's set people up for success, right? That's the first thing. If you're having trouble with someone on your team, I feel first step is self-reflecting. And have I given them all the tools they need to succeed? Have I given them the space to succeed? What more can I do? And then having an open conversation of, hey, what do you need to succeed? I mean, obviously in a digestible bit, because that's too broad a question for most people, right? Like, specific to the the situation. But it's interesting because yesterday I was working with a client and she's never run a team before, but now she has a business and a team and she wanted help like maximizing the team meeting. So we put together an agenda and she's like, the challenge is I feel like they hold back and don't share because they think I'm the expert, right? So I feel like when you lean into your authenticity, that really can help. So like, what are maybe some tips in that situation where you can like encourage participation from your team who maybe is holding back?
Absolutely. And a couple of things. I'm working with one leader right now, and we're talking about, first of all, what's your goal for this meeting? Because you're going to reverse engineer, the agenda in order to achieve that goal. And it's not even what happens just in the meeting. Think about it as, what are you actually reinforcing as behavior? What are you discouraging? And are those the right things in that respective manner? So are you creating a space that feels safe? And people talk about safe as though it's fluffy. It's not fluffy. It's the idea that people feel they can come with their ideas and share it. And you can debate the ideas without debating their worth as a human being. And you can set up structure so that it does help that. You can do kind of some prep. You can do breakout conversations first. Because one of the things I'll do in workshops is you do breakout groups, you come together, it's kind of an accordion. Because when people speak on behalf of a group, they don't feel as vulnerable because they feel people share their information. They don't feel like, okay, it's just me. The other thing is, what do you do when people come to you with questions? Do you answer them? Do you direct them? Then you're feeding that. You're feeding them coming to you, as opposed to stepping back and being able to ask questions, coach, help them come out, help them figure things out on their own. I think leaders will think about delegation as they just throw things over the wall. And that's not delegation. That's a recipe for disaster. It's about, how do you talk about what are the expectations? How do you give people context so that they understand it's not just me at my little station. It's understanding what's going on with the team so that when something happens, it makes it easier to pivot, to be able to come together. And when people are having those experiences, they're feeling connected, they understand their purpose as part of the team, they will be more likely to engage, to provide input, to work together, especially when they have relationships with each other and they feel safer. The other thing, and this is really small, but in that room, you're going to have a very big mix, most likely, even gender, ethnicity, culture, all of that, even when you look at extroversion and introversion. And again, just for people out there, those words, introversion is not about being shy. You can have introverts that are very outgoing. It is about how we process information and how we recharge ourselves in our energy. And as extroverts, me being one of them, I process by talking, and so I'm thinking out loud, essentially. Introverts tend to want to process the information in their heads first and then articulate an answer. The problem is we have this very fast-paced, and we have a very dynamic, and we also have a sense of leadership as being honestly kind of a cult of personality, like, oh, I'm out there, I'm dynamic. As an extrovert, it can be very hard to leave space for your introverts to be able to think for a minute and provide their input. And I've watched leaders do this, and space is very powerful and it can be very uncomfortable. And so if you're not used to holding it, it feels so important to just jump in and fill it. And so what's happening is you have the extroverts who are going to put their ideas out there. You have the introverts who are just waiting, but their extroverts kind of pile on top before they get in. And my extrovert peers, love you all, but we do not always have the best ideas. Sometimes we do, but just being willing to speak first or speak the loudest does not mean your ideas are the best. So as a leader, how do you hold space to get all the ideas on the table? How do you encourage those people, reinforce people to talk? What happens when they say something that you may not agree with? How do you encourage that, or how do you break that down so that it's not like you're just dismissing their ideas? How do you pull it in? And it could be a completely ridiculous idea, but part of it is too, where is that coming from? What is the context they understand, or what information are they missing? so that they bring that forward. And that is hugely informative. So it's not even what people say, it's what they don't say. And it's maybe the why they say it. And how are you digging into that as a leader?
Yeah, I love so much of this. And I giggled because I'm probably a 9 out of 10 on extroversion. And if you're familiar with the Colby assessment, I'm at 3394. My 9 long is quick start. So it means I have constant ideas. Yeah, my experience of learning this is I would bring the team together for these brainstorming sessions, and my director of marketing would freeze and it would frustrate me. And then I realized I was putting her on the spot and her brain didn't work that way. And so once I got past my frustration and understood what was going on, I would give her the topics ahead of time before we come in.
Yep.
Even though, like you, I talk out loud. And I mean, I'll even put headbuds on and go for a walk where people think I'm talking to someone. I'm really just talking because I need to think something through, right? But yeah, there are these learning moments, and like we don't get it right at the beginning, and it's okay. Just like entrepreneurship, leadership, it's okay to fail. Just, I mean, if you fail in a way that hurts someone else, go own it, apologize, and bring them back into the fold, right? But it's so interesting. You talked about the importance of the pause, and I agree with that. And it's also critically important in sales, because in sales, you're guiding someone to make the best decision for themselves. Many people do not pause and just give the other person time to digest, think, truly respond. So I don't know why that just popped up in my head when you were talking about the pause. So I love it. Yeah, and when you talk about structure, and we'll go to ambiguity next, because I always repeat something that Brene Brown said: clear is kind, unclear is unkind, right?
Yes.
Because especially working with women, often we've been socialized to like couch things in passive language or polite language, right? And a lot of times that creates the ambiguity. We're not being clear, right? So I'm a big believer in formulas. Like, I love the sandwich method for conversations, just so they have a formula to fit in until it becomes second nature. But when you talk about navigating ambiguity, bring us into that conversation a little bit, Rachel, because I think so many times we're miscommunicating. Like, you're saying the sky is blue and your team's hearing it's green, or someone on your team, like you said, and the power of words. You really, I feel, have to dig in and make sure that things have been comprehended, understood, and that you're all on the same page.
Absolutely. And I think people confuse, first of all, direct with harsh. And I like to say, I say it to my clients: look, I am going to be honest. I'm going to tell you the truth. And I'm very clear. It's my truth. You know, we all have our perspectives. We like to think we're objective. We're not. We're not. So when you have, though, a client where they have their perspective, they'll have my perspective, they may be getting some perspectives from other people, but cutting through that, especially as leaders, I don't like the word ladder, but ladder, matrix, whatever it is you're climbing up, people start to edit themselves. And the leaders think, oh no, I'm still one of the team, one of the people. And it's like, you're not. As much as we like to think our hierarchies are flat, and they may be flatter in some cultures than others, it's never completely flat, and it can't be. Back to your point about leaders being able to protect their team, advocate for their team, make decisions. Somebody has to do that. So it's really important to understand that there may not be people around you that are not telling you what they see, not because they're trying to be not a good part of their team, or even, keep things from you in terms of manipulation's a strong word, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is that there's always a power differential. So being able to tell someone the truth or help them see what maybe they're not seeing, that directness is, I like to say, direct and supportive. And that's what you want to do. You want to come at that conversation with genuine curiosity, first of all. How much do they know? What are they seeing? What's going on? And being able to provide your truth in a way that feels like it's in the other person's best interest. Now, I have a lot of leaders, they come and they want to try to figure out how to have a difficult conversation without the person ever getting upset, without their feelings getting hurt. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. It's just, you need to get comfortable with the fact that this is a difficult conversation. And the leader sometimes will say, well, it's just business. No, it's never just business. Unless you're just working with robots, and we're going that direction, so good for you. But until that, you're working with human beings, and we are emotional. We are. all of us, men, women,
Yes.
everybody. And in fact, the research shows that we are making most of our decisions based on emotion, and then we're rationalizing with facts. Both of those pieces need to be part of our discussion, but you need to be able to have those very clear conversations. And some people do use the sandwich method. I will also say that that can be ambiguous too, depending on the person. Yeah. And part of it is to your point, clear is kind. When we cushion things, we're doing it for us because we're uncomfortable. We're not doing it in their best interest. And that, I think, is really important because we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in order to best serve that person.
Yeah, I love it. And it all circles back to like where you started with authenticity. The better you know yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as a leader and an entrepreneur, the better you can show up because it's a constant up leveling of personal growth, like constant. And what I run into a lot of times is the leader is disorganized in their calendar or their energy or their confidence. That's why that's my first pillar with all my clients. How's your time, energy, and confidence management? And then they're trying to hide it. And so it trickles down, right? But for example, when you talked about meetings, I love coaching on having joyful meetings. Yes, have an agenda, prepare ahead of time, cut the BS, honor people's time. You could have a 30-minute meeting in 25 minutes. Like you can have an hour-long meeting in 50 minutes. We're not standing around the water cooler. Let's get business done. And you can build rapport into that, into
absolutely.
the structure of it. So it doesn't have to be cold, but I just think it's so important, and so many people don't give enough thought to this. So I love what you do, and I love how you're working with leaders and executives to really help bring out their best so they can be their best leader.
Absolutely.
It's critically needed in our world because, as you mentioned, we are all human beings.
Last time I looked, yes,
imperfect.
we are.
At least we think we're all human beings. We don't really know, but
Or
perfectly
close approximations.
Imperfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Rachel, I hate we're running out of time. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much. By the way, if you would like a free signed copy of Rachel's book, I will purchase it from her, have her sign it, and ship it to you. Here's what we need from you. Obviously, if you're looking for a book, you've enjoyed this episode, so please go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us a great review from your heart. Let us know. Let Rachel know that you really enjoyed her episode. Just take a screenshot of that and send it to team, T-E-A-M, at vixengathering.com, V-I-X-E-N. Shoot us that. I will purchase the books from Rachel, get it shipped to you, and super excited. I can't wait. I'm going to get my hands on your book as soon as it comes out. So I know it's coming out. By the time this episode airs, it's out, but it's coming out next week. So I'm going to go figure out how I can pre-order. Super excited. Thank you so much, Rachel. Oh, and by the way, if you have not subscribed to the Vixen Voice, go to vixengathering.com/podcast and hit the subscribe button. If you share your email address with us, you can unsubscribe at any time. But every Tuesday and Thursday, the amazing resources from our awesome, inspiring guests show up in your inbox so you don't even have to go look for them, right? Best way to get your hands on it and take action, like ordering Rachel's amazing book. So awesome. Well, Rachel, since it's your first time on the Vixen Voice, we didn't even get to this, but I love talking about energy, and we talk about feminine and masculine energy. It can be the yin and the yang, whatever you want to call it. But one thing I help women do is tap back into their feminine energy because we need a balance of both. And a lot of times when they're leaving corporate, they've kind of been masculinized, for lack of a better way of explaining it. Like you said, put in this box. So I'd love to hear, when do you feel your feminine energy is flowing the most? At what activity or what time do you feel like you're stepping in to that soft strength?
I think for me, it really is coaching. And I think people worry that as an executive coach, you don't want to be too soft. And I'm more of an M&M. I have a little kind of a crunchy side on the outside, and then I have a soft, gooey side. And honestly, I find that with my clients too. I find we're wearing armor a lot of times. And when I'm coaching, I am really in that space of holding the space for them and being really open, and the intuition that goes with that, and hearing what they say, hearing what they don't say, watching their facial expressions. That to me is a very feminine side of our energy. And I love that. I feel like a conduit. a vessel in those moments where I'm really helping them bring out the best in them. And, ego aside, which is hard for all of us, there's always ego management, even in coaching, right? But being able to really be open and be there for them and help them open up, to me, that feels like a very strong feminine energy.
I love it. I can completely relate to that, and so well said. I had a friend who is a coach who coaches coaches, and she posted in her Facebook group, like, how do you replenish from coaching? I'm like, what are you talking about? Coaching is what replenishes me. Like the 2 weeks I didn't coach over Christmas, I was like, like a client called me with an emergency, and I was like, cool, let's hop on a Zoom. I'm here. Let's go.
Love it.
Love it. So thank you for the passion you bring to what you do. It's so obvious. So what color would that feminine energy be for you?
What color would that feminine energy be for me? I've never really been a pink person, although my husband seems to like me in pink. And I'm like, oh, okay. I really resonate with sage. In fact, I use the practical sage in different areas. My book is technically produced by the Practical Sage Inc., INK.
Wow.
And I think for me, it probably does go back to the butterfly a little bit, the green and everything. But I love the idea of sage as a color and sage as wisdom. And so for me, those two things are very connected. And I think that is the color that resonates with me in this kind of practical wisdom.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. So Rachel, as we're wrapping up, what parting words would you like to share with our audience?
I would say we talk about boxes. We talk about the world trying to put us into boxes or cookie cutters or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I always like to say, I can't stop you from trying to put me in a box, but hell if I'm going to make it easy for you. And I think that's not even the biggest challenge. Don't put yourself in a box. Mm-hmm. And it's not like sometimes we always recognize that, but push outside what you think you're capable of. You have no idea what you're capable of. And sometimes we have to jump before we know how far we can leap.
Yes. I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you. And for everyone listening, you know that I always say the world needs more love. Here's my challenge to you today. How can you love yourself more as a leader and as an entrepreneur? How can you celebrate your strengths and maybe recognize your not so strengths, but give yourself grace for it and find a way around it? So thank you for joining us today, Rachel. This was an amazing talk. You definitely want to go check out Rachel's book. And Rachel, quickly share with our audience the best way for if they want to follow you right now. Where's the best way for them to find you?
Absolutely. So the butterflygoobook.net, first of all, good landing page. Right now we are in pre-order. On Tuesday, it will be launched as an ebook, and then the physical copies will come within about a week or two after that. So we're kind of doing this, continuous launch. If you do go on to butterflygoobook.net, if you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's playground areas. These are the exercises that are in the book. You can download them now. They are exercises you can do without the book. I will say some of the terminology might seem a little weird because it references the story in the book, but you can do this now. You can start playing around with it. You don't even have to buy the book. Just play with the exercises. Do what you want with them. So there's the book website, and of course LinkedIn, Rachel M. Burr, and my website, which is catamentum.com, CATAMENTUM.com.
Love it. Thank you so much. For everyone listening, I will talk to you soon. Have a great week. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Vixen Voice.